Hello, everyone. Thank you for participating in our Creating Effective Intermediary Affiliate Relationships presentation. We are so glad to have you here, and we're so glad that you have uh, participated in all of the sessions for the 2023 OHC Community Conference. My name is Taylor Edwards. I'm a technical assistance provider with ICF, and I'll be the host for today's presentation. So as you all are probably familiar with at this point, you're going to be participating in listen-only mode. That means that you will be able to chat with us in two ways. So one will be the chat box. That's where you'll be able to submit any technical issues. So if you have any technical issues with Zoom, go ahead and send a message to the host. And then we have the Q&A box where you can submit any of your content related questions, and just make sure that you're sending those to the host, presenters, and panelists. For our agenda today, we will have some introductions. We have a bunch of lovely speakers here with us today. And then we will go over some intermediary strategies. So we have the National Coalition for Asian Pacific American Community Development, or Capacity, here with us. We have the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, or PHFA. Then we also have Citizens Planning and Housing Association, or CHAPA. And then lastly, we'll have OHC Corporation. Throughout this presentation, please submit your questions, because we will have a Q&A section at the end where we can answer those, and then we will share some resources. So with that being said, I will pass the presentation off to my colleague, Karen Hoskins.
Thank you, Taylor, and welcome to all of you. And again, I'm Karen Hoskins, and I'm a lead housing counseling specialist and consultant with the ICF team. I feel particularly privileged to be part of this session because I served in a similar position as our four speakers prior to joining ICF, and can closely relate to some of the topics we'll be discussing here today. We have four speakers representing four intermediaries, which are all different in size, structure, and the length of time they provided oversight to an affiliate network. They'll be sharing their successes as well as some of their challenges, so that we have a lot to cover. So let's get started. And before we jump in, I just want to say Terry Redmond from Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency that Taylor introduced was having some technical challenges in getting into the session today. So we're hopeful that Terry will in fact be able to join before we conclude here today, but I just wanted to give that heads up to everyone. So with that said, I'm gonna hand it off to Joyce Pisnanot from National Capacity to get us started. Joyce.
Thank you so much, Karen, for setting up the conversation, and good morning and good afternoon to folks who are participating in this. We're so pleased as National Capacity to be a part of this panel today and to have this opportunity to share our experiences as a national intermediary. So if we could go to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. So the National Coalition for Asian Pacific American Community Development is a 22-year-old organization, 23-year-old organization. We were really founded by a group of community development organizations that felt like we needed a voice at the national level on issues that were most impacting low and moderate income Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. And since that time, that core group of 16 organizations, we've grown to now over 100 member organizations across the country, still working in those communities that are Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders that are most vulnerable. So, I really think of our work as sort of a three-legged stool, right? We are a national advocacy organization. That's why we were founded. And so we continue to play that role as policy advocate to really lift up issues that are most important to our communities and making sure that the needs of our community remain visible and that we're part of the policy solutions that help to advance social change. The second leg of our stool is really serving as a national intermediary. And this is where our work as a housing counseling network has really grown. And then the third leg of our stool is to really serve as a convener, really a movement builder. How do we bring together our 100+ members to be able to really move together on issues that we really care about, to learn from one another and build community with one another towards making change both locally and nationally. So just briefly, our housing counseling network was formed in 2010. It was in response to the foreclosure crisis. And at the time, we really saw that there were very few organizations across the country that had the language and cultural competency to serve low and moderate income Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders who were most being impacted by the foreclosure crisis. We were founded as really the first and only HUD intermediary that specifically focused on AA and NHPI communities. And so therefore we are also the longest running. So it's been about 13 years now. Our network specializes in providing culturally and linguistically appropriate services to tenants, low and moderate income homeowners, and potential home buyers. And our network serves their clients in over 30 AA and NHPI languages. And I think one of the things that I wanted to really lift up is that the size of our network as an intermediary has really ebbed and flowed. We'll talk about this a little bit later today, but at the current time, our network is 12 HUD-approved housing counseling agencies. As of the end of 2022, we've got 4 more organizations in the pipeline, but the size of our network has really, as I mentioned, been as large as 19 organizations, to 12 at the current day. One thing that I do think would be important to kind of lift up is that to participate in our network, what we're really looking for is those organizations who have the trust and the experience to really serve their clients that are Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders in the communities that they're located. We have organizations that serve a broad diversity of clients. And so it's not that our members only serve AA and NHPIs, but that is in large part the focus of many of who their clients are. If we could go to the next slide, that would be great. So in this slide, I just wanted to share a little bit about who our members are serving. So as I just mentioned, you don't have to only be serving AA and NHPIs to be a part of our network, but that is by and large mostly who our network serves. And really what we're trying to show in this chart is that if you look at this information, what you can see is that we're pretty distinct from other housing counseling agencies, or I should say, our housing counseling network members are pretty distinct from other housing counseling agencies because of the demographics of who they serve. So as compared to other housing counseling agencies, our members serve the lion's share of AA and NHPIs in the areas where they operate. So if you look at the chart on the left, for example, the bar graph, you can see that in certain areas like Boston, 99% of AAPI clients are served by national capacity members. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not on this chart, but that is true. That 99% of AAPI clients in the Boston area are served by national capacity housing counseling agencies. Similarly, in New York, 88% of Asian American clients are served by our network members and 80% of clients in the Twin Cities. And so, as I said, the lion's share of clients that are AA and PI in their regions are served by national capacities members. And then in this slide, what we'll also see is that in comparison to other housing counseling agencies, national capacities members are also serving clients who are lower income and have a much higher rate of limited English proficiency. So the chart on the left-hand side is showing clients and their income levels. So what you can see is that the blue bar graphs is showing what the client income level is for the clients served by our network members. And then the yellow is showing non-national capacity housing counseling agencies. And then the two charts on the right are really just showing the language competency, the clients who are requiring services in languages other than English. And so you can see national capacities clients, 67% of our clients are limited English proficient. And that is the flip of non-national capacity housing counseling agencies. And this data is really emerging from a study that we did from 2020 until 2022. And it was really looking at national data available on housing counseling agencies. It was a study we did in partnership with the UCLA Asian American Studies Center. And if you're interested in more information, you can actually find it on our website. The report is called Crisis to Impact, and it really lifts up the uniqueness of our housing counseling network. If we could go to the next slide. So today as panelists, we were asked to kind of reflect on some of the key things that we've learned in the process of becoming an intermediary. And there are three things that I just really wanted to lift up in terms of how we approach our work and things that we've thought about along the way. One of the first reflections is that our role, we've always taken this seriously because we are a convener and a movement builder, is that our role should really be about cultivating those relationships between our network members. This helps to reduce isolation, create a learning and sharing community, provides continuity of culturally responsive services during staffing transitions. And we found all of this to be true when our members can turn to one another for support and not just to us and our staff. And I just wanted to lift up a quote. One of our members said, the relationship building that happened occurred naturally, and in my opinion, has helped to retain folks in this space. One of the second roles that I think is really important is that it's part of our responsibility as an intermediary to really engage organizational leadership in order to meaningfully build program capacity. And what I mean by that is that in order for us to really build successful housing counseling agencies, part of our role is to really make sure that the leadership of those housing counseling agencies really understand what it means to be engaging in this body of work. As we all know, there's a lot of compliance, there's a lot of requirements, and there's a lot of work that's involved. And those details, as we know, don't always make it all the way up to the ears of the executive director. But it is really important for them to understand this commitment, because it is such a deep commitment for not just a program, but for the whole organization. The final reflection that I'll just lift up is that along the way, I think we've really tried to find ways to find opportunities to lift up subgrantee successes. We try to make sure that we're lifting up and celebrating successes where we can, communicating areas for growth, and of course, taking those opportunities to peek behind the curtain. And some of the ways that we do that is by, of course, conducting our audits and invoice documentation reviews, and really using those as opportunities for conversation to more deeply understand what are some of the things that they're experiencing and challenges that they're experiencing. Site visits have been incredibly helpful, and as I'm sure some of you other intermediaries in the room, being able to actually be on site with them again after 2 years of not being able to see each other because of COVID has really allowed us to really understand what's been going on. It's been refreshing to be able to be in person again. And then the last thing that I'll lift up is that we've started instituting progress reports. It's an opportunity for us to reflect back to them. Hey, we've gotten your reports. We understand what you've been delivering, and here's what we're seeing back. And here's how that compares to some of the goals that you set for yourself at the beginning of the grant period. And so, again, those opportunities to peek behind the curtain, but also lift up those successes and understand what's really going on. So, that's national capacity and our housing counseling network in a nutshell. I know we have lots of other conversations coming, but I'll turn it back to you, Terry.
Thank you, Joyce, for that. That was wonderful. Really like the idea of the progress reports that you all provide to your agencies and how it helps identify best practices and success stories. That's fantastic. Thank you for that. So next, Elizabeth from CHAPA is here to share some of their strategies. Oh, and I see Terry is here. Terry, we moved your slides to later in the deck because we weren't sure that you'd be able to join, but so glad you're here. Elizabeth?
Thank you. So my name is Elizabeth Palma Diaz, and I oversee the HAD grant program here at CHAPA. Can we go to the first slide, please?
Elizabeth, we have a little bit of feedback. Sean, can you provide any direction for Elizabeth on that?
Karen, can you mute for a second and then Elizabeth talk to see if maybe it's coming from someone's speaker?
Hi, is that better?
You're still echoing. In your microphone settings, on the bottom left, there's a little arrow where your microphone button is, and see if you have just one selected or if you have multiple.
Oh, I have two. How is that? Is that better?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So CHAPA has been a HAD intermediary since 1999. We have had affiliates at the moment we have 14 affiliates in 4 New England states, but at some point we had over 20. Our affiliates provide different counseling services, from tenant counseling, pre-purchase and post-purchase education and counseling, and default and delinquency counseling. Today, I have the honor to share not so much the history of our network, but I will be sharing more our best practices and experiences that we have learned through the years during these years that we have worked with these intermediaries across New England. Next, please. So something that I want to share is something that we have done is work closely with our agencies, preparing them for performance reviews. As you know, performance reviews are very important. They help intermediaries identify not only risk areas, but areas of improvement. It also helps us see how the funds are being spent, if they're spent wisely and at the right places. We're able also to see the quality of counseling and the organizational strength. Next. I would say something that we have implemented in the last few years and has really worked for us is doing trainings and in a different style, not so much in a lecture style, but more in a participatory style. We have identified high performance agencies and their staff and asked them to help us facilitate these trainings. We noticed that when we started doing these trainings this way, we had better engagement and better results in terms of participation and information retention from our counselors. We also have identified HAD policies, any new policies that are implemented, and we prepare our agencies ahead of time during these trainings or before the performance reviews, so they can prepare and implement these policies. A couple of examples of these policies are the ineligible participant policy and the monitoring policy, which is basically having an action plan to monitor your files and in-house and make sure that your counseling files are in order, that you're preparing each document that is required for a counseling session of a participant, which, as you know, I'm preaching to the choir here, but you know that a budget is required, that an intake form, action plan. So all those documents have to be in this file. So we help them to develop a monitoring policy and before the participants. The other area that we work with agencies is the housing counseling work plan, and making sure that they are implementing the activities they said they were going to implement, and meeting those achievements, updating those work plans on the annual basis, making sure that they align with the information they have in HCS and in their work plan. Next. We also these trainings and through technical assistant meetings one-on-one with the agencies, we ask, we go over these common findings that we have learned that come up during performance reviews. So we educate our counselors so to make sure they address these issues ahead of time. Some of these examples are missing budgets review with clients and finance analysis, no distributing the home inspection materials, which is a requirement during group education and counseling, missing action plans, and documentation of follow-up results, making sure the files are closed when the counseling has ended. Lastly, something else that we do at CHAPA is we provide quarterly reporting support. We do this one-on-one, or we do this as a group, depending on the needs of the intermediaries. We help them with the HAT 9902, data entry, or just answering questions about their CMS. Also with the quarterly PAR, budgets, invoices, and CMS backup, just making sure all this documentation is prepared properly and is accurate. That will be all for me. I will hand it back to Karen. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We really appreciate that. And just a reminder to the audience, if you have questions for Elizabeth or any of our speakers, you can put those in the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can before we end the session today. Our next speaker is Sarah Savage. She's here from OHC, she'll be discussing the strategies they've put in place in their short time as an intermediary. OHC is the newest of the intermediaries represented here today. And so we're delighted to have them bring their perspective on their journey thus far. Sarah?
Thank you, Karen. My name is Sarah Savage. I'm a programs officer for OHC Corporation, primarily working with the HUD Housing Counseling Network. So with OHC's mission is to provide opportunities for Native people to develop financial assets and create wealth. So we work with tribal communities to establish strong permanent programs that contribute to economic independence while strengthening sovereignty for Native communities. So we provide technical assistance and training opportunities while also providing lending capital and policy and advocacy work. As a national intermediary, Native CDFI, we focus in tribal communities or organizations that serve tribal communities. Next slide, please. So OHC's Housing Counseling Network was started in 2020 and gained, 2018, and gained HUD approval in 2021 as the first and only Native American focused housing counseling intermediary. The network has grown since to 6 HUD-approved housing counseling agencies, with additional network affiliates hoping to gain HUD approval in the next year. We also have new agencies joining in 2024 who are either starting their housing counseling programs or have existing programs that are working towards HUD approval in the future. Next slide, please. As a network and really as an organization, OHC works very closely with each of our network agencies. So similar to that Elizabeth was just sharing, on a quarterly basis, we meet with each one of our network partners to provide one-on-one technical assistance. We'll review the 9902 data. We'll discuss and review any required financial reports. We'll also make sure there's space for any additional questions that may have come up over the last quarter. This provides a great amount of time for technical assistance if necessary, and really helps to build stronger relationships with each of our network partners. So we do this with the agencies that are both HUD approved and with the agencies that are working towards HUD approval, with the goal of strengthening those agencies working towards HUD approval once they gain HUD approval. We also host network-wide monthly calls with varying topics. Sometimes those are training, sometimes those are industry professionals coming in and sharing more about their programs or their best practices based on their experiences. And we also feature our network affiliates from time to time to share some of their successes and challenges with their housing counseling program, with the goal of learning from their network peers. So we regularly will survey our network for different topics that may be of interest to them. And then we work hard to include those topics in both the monthly calls or in in-person training. So at least once per year, we do try to host an in-person training. They're definitely providing opportunities for the network to review some of the challenges we've been working through over the last year. But it also provides a much needed space for in-person networking and peer-to-peer experiences. So we work with our network to provide additional opportunities as necessary, and we may also recruit HUD-approved training organizations like RCAC or NeighborWorks America to host these trainings with us. We also work very closely with industry professionals, consultants, to assist with specific program support pieces. So we've worked on HUD certification toolkits, HUD approval toolkits, conflict of interest toolkits, et cetera, as well as creation of sample policies and procedures and templates, and any other technical assistance that may come up. So these consultants have been a huge asset to OHC, especially during our initial time in gaining HUD approval. It's definitely strengthened our ability to serve our network affiliates, and also gives our network additional confidence in their programs and hearing from those industry professionals. So again, we work really, really hard to meet with our network partners regularly and meet them where they're at. So we may provide technical assistance to start a program if they're working from the ground up, or may work individually with specific staff for best ways to complete or to move towards their goals as an organization. So we really leave it up to the organization to reach out to us for what their needs might be, and really work with an open door policy to meet the needs of all of our agencies. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Karen.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. We appreciate it. That's some great information you've shared. And then our final speaker is Terry Redmond from Pennsylvania Housing. Terry, we're glad to see you were able to resolve your connection issues and be with us today. So Terry, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me. And okay, PHFA's mission is to provide safe and decent and affordable housing to seniors, persons with disabilities, and persons of modest means. Our partners are primarily developers, lenders, and counseling agencies. And our profit center is specifically servicing our loans. And this year, we're celebrating 50 years of service. Next slide. So today, I'll be sharing a few components and capacity building efforts really to describe how we support our housing counseling network. I'm proud to say that we have about 66 counseling agencies in our network. About 10, 12 years ago, we had 114. So because of the capacity building issues or compliance issues that have arisen, have been placed on the network. We've eliminated some of the agencies that were once in our network. We fund our network of counseling agencies with 4 major funding sources. We have a board set aside. We get money from HUD. We often get money from NeighborWorks when they put out they're fortunate enough to attract funding for counseling. And then we have a housing trust fund that we've set aside money for counseling agencies. So right now we have about 167 certified counselors. 150 of them are true traditional housing counselors. And we have 17 managers and or program supervisors that have attained the certification. And we really stress that because if an organization only has 1 counselor and the counselor quits, leaves, no longer functions as a certified counselor, that agency can't perform the housing counseling services, which is of value to the community and to us. We have about 35 counselors right now in training. We provide training activities, which I'll get into later. So we're expecting hopefully by the end of the year that we'll have 35 additional counselors added to our platform. We've been supporting the network for 40 years. So we have a fairly seasoned network. The networks really started to support our home emergency mortgage assistance program back in 1983, where the type of counseling that was conducted was mainly default and delinquency counseling. And then we started a low-income program and began to do pre-closing counseling. Today, we provide comprehensive housing counseling services, which was expanded in the year of 2003. I'm proud to say that most of our lending products do support and require counseling. Been an advocate for counseling since I started this program in 2003, and our agency really has adopted the concept of supporting the counseling activities. Karen asked me to speak about some innovative approaches, and I'm not sure that I mentioned that my title is Director of Counseling. So unlike most housing finance agencies, we have a staff of about 10 people devoted to providing technical assistance, support, and compliance work. We use the de minimis funding that we get from our HUD grant and program oversight funding from other federal funds. We take that money, instead of putting it in our coffers, we pass it through and share it with our counseling network. So we develop training programs and we fund those programs and provide third-party vendor opportunities for training our counseling network using that money, the de minimis money and the program oversight money. We also provide network events where we encourage networking opportunities with our lenders, who we have about a little under 100 lender partners. And we also invite realtors to attend these events, basically to help build relationships between the 3 sectors. We also provide an opportunity to recognize our counselors, certified counselors, and the agencies that support their work and share best practices. That's how we utilize an opportunity, a public opportunity, to kind of share information with other agencies on what's happening and how the agencies are using the partners that we are connected to advance their business. Next slide. Some of the ways in which we establish trust. So we're organized. We have an application and a partnership agreement that kind of spells out and dictates what our requirements are. Of course, we need to have them be an official 501c3. We look at their recent audits, and we insist that they have a DUNS number and articles of incorporation, a budget. We want to understand what the structure of their agency is, if they're highly recognized within the community. And we look at their processes, their policy and procedures. On a quarterly basis, we ask for renewal documents. Some examples could be the most recent audit, or the 990 tax form that has to be submitted for nonprofits, and their SAMS designation. It has to be done pretty much yearly. We do this for two reasons, obviously to comply with our funders, but it also, which is an important, I think, aspect of the reason why I'm sharing this, is that when we apply for funding through HUD and other sources, they want to know that we have examined these documents. And so we don't ask them for this information during the application process. We ask that information of them when they join our network, and then we go through a renewal process to make sure that all the standard documents are up to date. We provide orientation, third-party training on various administrative support, pretty much on a daily, monthly, or quarterly basis. We have a dedicated compliance team, and we've standardized the process of how we approach our compliance work through the investment that PHFA has provided in our staff. We even hire temporary workers when we get support, like for instance, the NeighborWorks grant, the Housing Stability Counseling Program. We'll hire a temp to provide and train them to process the invoices and to make sure that the agencies are adhering to the strict compliance standards. And additionally, we have employed 2 business development officers that really work with each of the housing counseling agencies and provide technical assistance. We provide the training that's necessary on our billing systems, on the various initiatives. We bring in third-party trainers, and we customize trainings that they can take advantage of. And we also provide them with business development training on a short-term, long-term, and intermediate and long-term strategies, basically helping them build their capacity to do more counseling if they're interested. Next slide. And lastly, it's becoming a challenge, I think, to keep up with the HUD certification. And what we've decided to do, we've put together a requirement that each agency has to put together a training plan. There are various courses that are required under the NeighborWorks program. Of course, HUD requires the HUD certification, and we provide the training for that. But there's just a plethora of information, I think, that the agencies need to understand and learn in order to get the proper certifications through a third-party national certification agency. At PHFA, we require our counselors to not only have the HUD certification, but also have a specialty certification garnered through a third-party trainer. So we put together a training plan template, if you will, that provides them with the details and supports the policy that PHFA provides, which I should add is higher than the national standards. We do have a dedicated staff to really keep track of the certification process. We provide the test-taking training course. And once that training course is completed, we monitor and tally each counselor that has passed that course. We keep a record of it. We recognize them in our newsletter by name and also at the awards ceremony. And we have a dedicated staff person internally that will verify through the FHA connection that they are actually employed in a counseling agency. So I do have the training plan documentation and also our compliance checklist, internal checklist that we provide that could be helpful to some of you who are listening. And I also did provide the application of what we require agencies to join our network. So hopefully that'll be helpful. And thank you for allowing me to share.
Absolutely. Thank you, Terry. Appreciate that. And those documents that Terry was referencing that she's sharing, I believe we have a link that we will be dropping that you can access those documents for your use and review. So I want to just thank all of our presenters today. And we are getting a few questions through the Q&A box. Before we go on to the Q&A box, I just want to go back to Terry just real quickly. With those standard forms that you've implemented, how have they been received by your agencies? How challenging or not challenging has it been to implement use of standard forms?
Well, I think they've been helpful. The compliance form really provides a standardization for our staff so that the agencies, when they go through the scrutiny, if you will, of the requirement of providing compliance, preparing for the compliance review, it standardizes the process. So, and it closely resembles I guess the requirements that HUD or another federal body would require. So I think for us, it just, I think it makes it easier to prepare for both the agency and for the staff. The training plans, you know, I have not gotten any complaints, but it certainly cuts down off the phone calls and the questions that agencies have in terms of what course do I take? Did I take this course? You know, we require them to upload their certificates and their certifications. So during that process, we're able to provide the technical assistance that they need to keep track of everything. When they have personnel reviews, we suggest that the program manager review the training plans and update the training plans so that everybody's on the same page as to what's expected and what comes next in terms of achieving the training goals. Okay,
great. And again, Taylor has dropped that link to those documents in the chat box. So, just moving on to, again, our audience Q&A and some of the other questions that we might ask our speakers. There's a question here about the in-person trainings, and Sarah and Joyce. I think both of you have mentioned about in-person trainings. I would, if all of you wouldn't mind just coming back on camera, we have some questions that might have application for all of you. But just to start us off, again, the in-person trainings has caught some attention here. And Sarah, we'll start with you. The cost of those in-person trainings, who supports that?
Yeah, we work really hard to provide stipends when possible through different fundraising sources. When not possible, it is agency responsibility to cover the cost of those trainings. But we do find them valuable, and we don't hear too much of upset folks in regards to that. So.
Okay. What about you, Joyce? You mentioned the benefits associated with in-person events as well. What about the cost?
Yeah, so we've actually been able to use our HUD grant award to support participation from our members because, training and professional development is an eligible expense, and we really see that as a critical part of making sure that they're understanding some of the requirements of the program and compliance. So it doesn't always cover it in the entirety of the cost, obviously. So we leverage other private resources to be able to support their attendance. And I'll say that National Capacity holds an in-person convening at least once a year. And then in years where we have a national convention, sometimes we're lucky enough to have our members come together twice a year. And so for bringing them together at our convention, we're usually able to leverage other private scholarships that bring them there.
Okay, great. And Elizabeth, there was a question for you. Can you speak more on ineligible participant policy? I think that was referenced, the participant policy was referenced in your remarks. Can you speak a little more about that?
Sure. So basically, this is a policy that has come up during the performance reviews that is required by the agencies to have in place. Basically, and many of the agencies already have it, but it's a procedure to check the background of the board members, directors, staff members, and counselors that will be handling the files of the clients, making sure that they have a clear background check.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And then a question really for all of you, we could just sort of quickly get your input on this. What are some of your agency's selection criteria? What do you require in order for an agency to become a part of your network, to be an affiliate agency of yours? Terry, you want to start us off with that one?
Sure. Well, first they have to have a certified counselor. We don't actively recruit, but when we do have agencies approach us, or if we are looking for an agency to cover an area that's not covered in the state, we want them to demonstrate that they have staff that is certified. So they have to already be in business, okay, already organized as a nonprofit, and working towards training their staff. Now, we will provide some support. We have a level up program, but they have to start out having the certified counselor. And they have to commit to, I see some questions, they have to commit to not only getting the HUD certification for the counselor, but also getting a certification from a third-party national trainer in a specialty. So if they want to specialize in pre-purchase, they need to be doing that. If they want to specialize in foreclosure intervention, then they need to have someone specialize in that area as well.
Okay, great. Joyce, how do you select your agencies?
I think maybe the only other thing that I'd add in terms of, beyond what some of the HUD, making sure they meet some of the HUD requirements, is also thinking about who else in our network is already in that area. Are they serving a community that maybe we haven't served? Because there are so few organizations that have the language and cultural competency to serve Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities, we're often trying to make sure that there's diversity in who's reaching our community, that we're reaching populations that maybe haven't been served already. And then, of course, that there really is, as I spoke to earlier, that organizational commitment to really understanding what the program is about, right? That it's not just like, oh, I can access these funds from HUD, but that this is a long-term commitment that an organization is really prepared to make, and that they're, from the leadership down, are bought into what it means to be a HUD housing counseling agency.
Thanks for that. Sarah, what about you? What about OHC?
Yeah, this is something that we've probably been that we have been working on, and we haven't quite perfected what our processes might look like in regards to new agencies joining our network. We've been pretty open with our groups at this point. We have network partners that don't have HUD certified staff and don't yet meet the HUD compliance standards. And our goal right now is to work with those agencies to meet those HUD compliance standards to become HUD approved agencies. So we're really kind of working primarily, of course, in Native communities with agencies that have financial counseling services and are looking to kind of enter into the world of the HUD housing counseling field. And so we're still kind of navigating what that might look like in the future for us. Right now, there's not really a capacity issue for our organization in regards to more agencies joining our network. So we haven't necessarily defined that process yet. But it is something that we've thought about and are considering in the future. And of course, everything that Joyce and Carrie have previously shared, you know, we really want there to be a commitment to the Native communities that they're serving, and an understanding of the goals of the housing counseling program, and how that program can support their organization and their communities as well.
Okay. Okay, great. And Elizabeth, you have any comment on that question?
I will just add in that we ask potential agencies that want to join to have a CMS already in place and know that they're tracking their clients. We don't want them to come and practice with us how to track their clients. We want to make sure they're already capturing demographics, income, and all that. We also ask for their financial audits, or organizational charts. I'm just thinking more of the the documentation that is required. We ask them to as a test or just as a practice to complete documents that are required for the NOFO application and see how they respond. So we use the last, the most recent application that we filled out. We ask them to complete those and then review them. And also we ask them to complete the 9910 and also see how they would answer those questions, because that's a form that is required for in a HUD audit.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for your input today and for your insights. We really appreciate hearing from you. One of the things we talked about in our conversation and preparing for this session is that one size doesn't necessarily fit all in terms of some of these strategies. It requires knowing your network, knowing their needs. So we hope that some of what was shared today will be helpful to the agencies that are represented in our audience. So thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Taylor for some closing remarks and to close us out, some information and to close us out. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Yes, so as we move on with the conference, I just wanted to let you guys know that there are 2 other sessions happening right after this. So if you want to go to After the Storm, Housing Counselors Respond to Disasters, that is going to open very soon. And then Spotlight on Rental Housing Counseling Long-Term Lessons. Those are going to be the sessions to close out the rest of the day today. As always, stay connected. Conference page, 6Connect, HUD Exchange. There are a lot of ways to stay connected with the Office of Housing Counseling. And thank you so much. So like I said, we do have 2 additional sessions if you want to pop over there. And there might be just a small delay, but those sessions will be ready in just a few moments. So thank you so much.